First on Fox tonight, State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's office attacks Fox 45 News reporting. Mosby's communications director sent this letter to the FCC asking the agency to investigate Fox 45 News for what she calls slanted and biased coverage of her boss. The American news media has long challenged politicians, and the same is true of politicians going after the media, especially if they don't like the reporting. It amplifies the debate over what's fair and what falls under the freedom of the press. Sinclair's chief political correspondent, Scott Thuman, takes a look.
From President Nixon's epic clashes with the media, threatening the New York Times and Washington Post, to FDR's disparaging of the press at large, convinced it was out to get him, to the Justice Department under President Obama having seized phone records of reporters in an effort to track down leaks.
I've got one television station that is entirely devoted to attacking my administration.
The government and the media have long found themselves at odds.
Politicians have been feuding with the press for as long as there have been politicians in the press. We have the First Amendment, but of course that doesn't mean we haven't had problems.
Now, Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has filed this complaint with the FCC, asking it investigate WBFF for its relentless coverage of her office, saying it could reasonably be categorized as blatantly slanted, dishonest, misleading, racist, and extremely dangerous. Mosby's representative called it an intentional crusade against her. WBFF says the station is simply shining a light on government actions, including an ongoing FBI investigation into the finances of Mosby and her husband, the city council president, and on her recent push to not prosecute some low-level crimes.
Criticizing journalists for how they cover stories is totally fair game, and sometimes that criticism is very much deserved. Where it changes is where the government is brought in, especially when the government is brought in by another part of the government. It's scary and chilling to think that local politicians being covered by local broadcasters, which is the way it should work, can shut them up by going to their regulators.
Politicians and the press seem increasingly at odds, most blatantly perhaps when President Trump revoked White House access to reporters with whom he constantly butted heads.
That's enough. That's enough.
That's enough.
Only to have the courts tell the White House it couldn't. Whether it's picking or choosing, as Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis did just this week, only allowing Fox News into his controversial voting rights bill signing.
It was on national TV, it wasn't secret.
Or the debate over who or what is allowed on big tech's social media platforms these days, prompting numerous congressional hearings. It's a new chapter in the fight over journalistic accountability versus freedom of speech.
You have to let journalists do their job. It's fair game to criticize them when they do it badly, but there's that sharp line between criticizing them and sticking the law on them.
In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
The state's attorney's letter to the FCC about Fox 45 News coverage has sparked some strong words on talk radio. Here's a sample of what was heard this morning on the C4 and Brian Neiman show.
You are using financial money, taxpayer money, to fight your own personal grievance with a news entity. We are using taxpayer money to try and quiet a First Amendment right of freedom of the press. Where is the ACLU on this?
Political insider Armstrong Williams is also weighing in on the Mosby letter. As Megan Gillen reports, Williams says the letter itself may end up creating more trouble for Mosby.
The Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office is now calling on the FCC to investigate Fox 45 News for coverage of Marilyn Mosby. Mosby is currently the focus of a federal criminal investigation, the subject of a scathing report from the City Inspector General, and has her house under an IRS lien for unpaid federal taxes. Political commentator Armstrong Williams weighing in on the situation. Marilyn Mosby tweeting last night that Fox 45 News is slanted, dishonest, and racist. Is this appropriate for an elected official to make such a charge publicly?
Everybody cries bias and unfairness and racism or whatever else, but there are serious allegations against her that must be addressed. Has nothing to do with your coverage. It has to do with the fact that you have to follow the evidence. And it's as if she's saying, her office is saying, stop holding me accountable, stop investigating me. And in a desperate mood, she tossed a bomb to the FCC to try to save her. And that's just not going to work. You've got to follow this process. And it's really about what is in the best interest of Baltimore.
The letter from Mosby's communication director is on official stationery from the city state's attorney's office. Does that create an ethical problem for the office that this is really a taxpayer expense?
Well, it would be kind of funny if the state attorney did not do her due diligence, because obviously she was involved. I mean, she should have shown the courage to send it out under her name instead of her communications director. So obviously, hopefully they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's before they sent that letter out.
Armstrong adding that no one is above the law. I'm Megan Gilland, Fox 45 News.
Well, Fox 45 News is committed to investigating corruption in public officials, asking tough questions and holding leaders accountable. Our award-winning investigative unit is a key part of delivering that commitment. While we understand that it may not be popular with the individuals and institutions upon which we are shining a light, we stand by our reporting. Our question of the day involves the letter to the FCC. Is it proper for the state's attorney to potentially silence the media from reporting and informing the public? Right now, 97% of you say no. Go to FoxBaltimore/vote to let your voice be heard. Today, we gave City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby and her communications director, Zy Richardson, an opportunity to sit down for an interview. They refused. We also offered to send over questions and have them send back a written response. Instead, Richardson sent us the news release about the City State's Attorney's Office filing the FCC complaint. And stay with us. We will have continuing coverage on the City State's Attorney's Office attempt to potentially silence Fox 45 News. You can read the letter Mosby's communication director sent to the FCC. It is on our webpage right now. That's foxbaltimore.com.